Hello and welcome back to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. It's Matchday 6. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and I'm joined as always by the trio of Adrian, Clarke, Mark O'Hare, and Miguel Delaney. We were kind of like, what do we cover? There's some good, I would call sexy fixtures out there that have nothing on the line. So we're going to focus on some of those maybe unsexy games, but they do have a lot riding on it, no less than qualification. And before we get into what games we'll be covering, the four marquee games, as usual, any other bets, and then best bets. I want to touch on, Miguel, very briefly on the Champions League group stage as it is now. I know not many people are fans of the Swiss model. I think it's going to probably make things worse. But as the system is right now, is it a case that there's no system that will take care of maybe all these super clubs qualifying, or where are you at currently with the group stage as it is?
Well, I mean, in terms of a format, there's actually nothing wrong with a group stage. It's a classic football, groups of four. That's what we've all grown up with. That's what World Cup used to be based on. That's going to change as well. But the issue is really it's the financial inequality that the Champions League has fostered, which has led to the situation where every year it does feel like the group stage gets kind of less and less unpredictable, or gets more predictable, if you like. Hence, we go, even though there had been some entertaining games and some real flashpoints throughout this group stage, we still have a situation where Liverpool got hammered in their opening game. They're still through with one match to go, and there's only 4 places up for grabs in this last match week. I suppose, I mean, I did an article on the Swiss system recently and kind of the wider changes in the Champions League. I think probably one of the biggest issues with the Swiss system, I suppose, that it just feels so opaque and difficult to kind of explain. It's just not as, I mean, these things such ideas often go in simplicity and something that's easy to grasp. But if you talk to people in UEFA, they actually defend the system a lot, and they insist that it will keep more going to the last day. I think that's what all their models suggest, but we'll see. I mean, I mean, I think it's more than nostalgia, but just when you compare even that discussion about the Swiss system and even what's happened with the Champions League this week, I remember as recently as the mid-2000s, but especially in kind of that late 90s period, the Champions League group stage is felt as do or die as the knockout stage. I remember so many Manchester United campaigns in the 90s. Now, obviously, English football wasn't quite as wealthy then as it was now, or as it is now, but it did feed into kind of a much more competitive Champions League group stage. I remember one of the most famous then was 96-97, when it was only champions, and Rosenborg knocked out AC Milan. Now, of course, Milan that's one of the games where there is something on the line this week. But then again, it's not exactly the Milan of 1997.
Yeah. Go on, Adrian.
Just very quickly. It's been a bit dull because too much has been decided too early. But in the same breath, it's not been that predictable, is it? I mean, I don't think people were predicting Barcelona going out, or Atletico or Juve. We've had surprises.
I would take the point in Atletico and Juve. Even Barca, ultimately, who do they go out to? Another one of these. Going to Bayern, who've had the run of Germany for a decade, and Inter, who were one of the Super League clubs. So, Barca didn't go out. I mean, the big surprise, to be fair, is Club Brugge. And there'll always kind of be variations. But I think the trend is kind of, it's pointing one way. And it is why they're changing it as well. Because they realize that audiences have been going down for the group stage.
Yeah, Mark, for you on will the Swiss model fix it, and is there anything to be fixed based on the group stage? Obviously, you can take this year's isolation that 12 out of 16 teams have qualified, but as Adrian touched on, there has been a small bit of unpredictability given the likes of Juventus and Atletico going out.
Yeah, I think this year has been unusual in the fact that 12 of those spots have already been cleaned up by the time we got to Matchday 6. But there has been a few surprise results, and clearly Atletico, Barcelona, and Juventus, 3 members of the supposed Super League, going out before Matchday 6. There's clearly some upsets, surprises, and shocks there. But the beauty, I'd agree with everything Miguel said. The beauty of the current system is its simplicity. Everyone knows what's required in almost every juncture, really. So, I just don't see the reason in trying to overcomplicate matters. And as soon as I think you lose that simplicity, you start losing people very quickly. And I think that's one of the biggest problems coming into the Swiss system is that, but also the bloated nature of it now as well, where, at the moment, I think we play 96 group games to whittle down from 32 teams to 16. When the Swiss system comes in, we're playing 196 matches to basically half the field, really. We're getting 4 extra match days. I just don't see the necessity for it, bar just money and greed, really. And also, there's an opportunity now in the Swiss system where a team ranked 24th can still go on to actually claim the European Cup effectively, because there's a playoff system which will be introduced as well for teams that finish outside a certain area. It just, I'll be honest, I can't bang this drum enough, really. It's, ever since I heard this news, to me, it feels like the Champions League is turning into one of the most ridiculous competitions that football's probably ever seen, really, at least at continental level. I personally think it could be an abomination. And, I'm really surprised there's not been more opposition to this, because right now, whilst there are inequalities in the current system and financial imbalances is clearly a big issue that needs to be addressed, what we're moving to is just not the answer. I'm not sure what the answer is, but this doesn't feel like it will be it. And I'm happy to chat along in a sort of a year or two's time when we have it and be proven wrong.
Aside from the gulf in financial power for the big boys against the rest, which is distorting every league across Europe and the Champions League, apart from that, there is nothing wrong with the Champions League format. There isn't. It's a classic.
It's perfect. Right?
It's
same with the World
perfect.
Cup. And the World Cup, of course, for similar reasons, they're going from 32, this perfect system, not that nice split. You get the kind of the richness of the group stage, or at least when things are even. And in the World Cup as well, they're going from 32 to 48, and this kind of, again, opaque groups of three that they still haven't, which has led to logistical issues in the past, most famous in 1982. Now they're working out ways to avoid that Germany-Austria situation with Algeria back then. But it is a classic case. It feels like, as much as anything, it's this kind of complacency drifts into football. Well, we've had it like this for so long. Let's just do something different. But yeah,
it's just money. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we are entering into a very interesting period in football history, especially with these kind of, like, the Super League hasn't gone away. We've got the next stage of that court case in December. That's to see whether it'll actually go to an outright case in the European Court of Justice, and whether the Super League clubs can argue that UEFA runs a monopoly, because essentially what they want is a Europe-wide Premier League where the club is the base of power. And so we've got all that going on, as well as kind of other... A lot of people are basically talking about the need for a reset in football, but what that looks like, who knows?
Yeah, Adrian, last point. Anything else sad before we're done?
Sorry, anything?
Anything else sad there before we were done?
No, all good.
No.
All good.
Yeah. I thought you were keeping someone on your chest there. So
no, we're all good.
Yeah, the final point I would say, it's just like you look at what the Champions Cup and the Heineken Champions Cup in rugby has done, and kind of complicated it even further. I thought that format worked very well. So hopefully the same doesn't happen to football. We'll be covering 4 marquee games, as I mentioned, any other bets, and then best bets. We'll get straight into it. The 4 games, incidentally, are Marseille.
We can't hear you, John.
Oh, can you hear me okay there now? Sorry, yeah. So we'll go straight to Marseille versus Spurs and take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com. You can back Marseille at 3.0. Tottenham are available at just short of 6-4 at 2.48, and the draw is available at 3.55. Both teams to score yes is 1.75 and no is 2.24. Marseille are getting a quarter of a goal head start at 1.84, and the total is 2.5. Slightly shaded towards the over at 1.91. So, Mark, we'll go to you for this game. This is obviously the game of the Champions League Matchday 6, and it could have been so different had Spurs got the job done in Matchday 5.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for all the disappointments of other groups being sewn up, I think Group D is absolutely made up for it with 4 teams who can still finish top of the group or miss out altogether on the knockout stages. And Spurs are the only team who are sort of guaranteed a top 3 finish in European football come the new year, really. To do so, they have to avoid defeat in Marseille. A win sees them top the group. Losing puts them in the Europa League, regardless of what happens elsewhere. And Marseille basically just need to win, really, and they've qualified. They can even top the group if Sporting Frankfurt ends in a draw as well. So last week, Marseille's head coach, Igor Tudor, basically said, we can get through by winning our final home game in front of our home supporters. What more do our fans want, really? And the thing is, they're a very demanding bunch at Marseille, and they want a lot more than that because recent performances haven't been good. After the sort of flying start that they've made to this season, they've dropped off. But in Europe, weirdly, their results have kind of turned around, and they've managed to put themselves into a position of promise despite losing back-to-back games to start the pool. But at the weekend, things got a little bit ugly. They blew a 2-0 lead at Strasbourg, conceded in the last minute. They've now won just once and lost 4 of the last 6. Further back, it's just 4 wins from 12. A run that started with the reverse game against Spurs, where they're actually really competitive, before the red card. And Spurs obviously managed to, came in sways and finally tipped the balance in their favour with that red card. But yeah, regardless of the recent form, the Velodrome will be packed. There will be tifos. There'll be a fabulous atmosphere. But they've not been great at the Velodrome under that pressure. Just 1 win in the last 5 there. And, for all the issues about Spurs on the road, particularly at the weekend, getting out of jail at Bournemouth, they've only won 3 games in 9 on their travels this term as well. So it's hard to sort of really back either team with huge amounts of confidence. Spurs, as you say, will be still kind of smarting from that Matchday 5 finale against Sporting. But I think the key for me is the fact that they don't need to win this match. And I think with Antonio Conte in charge, you can just assume that they're going to be very pragmatic. I'm not going to say they play for a point, but it allows them to utilise their main asset, which is the counter-attack and transitions, really. It allows them to play in their preferred style. They have been struggling to create chances in open play, particularly against low blocks. But I think they'll be quite happy to cede possession here, invite Marseille on and try and hit them on their counter-attack. But also, I don't think Marseille will be naive enough to sort of fall into that trap either. So I'm expecting things to be a bit of a slow burner here, in all honesty. Marseille might go for the jugular to begin with. I just don't know. But I'm assuming that they're wise enough not to play into Spurs' hands, at least to begin with, and then desperation might creep in the second half. So I've gone down the route of opposing first half goals. You can get under 1 first half goal at 2.1, which means if there's exactly 1 goal, it's money back. If there's no goals in the first half, it's a winner. If there's 2 goals or more, the bet is a loser. You're getting odds against on that, which I think is fair enough. Spurs' only away match this season to feature 2 or more first half goals was the North London derby. The 13 Premier League games are averaging just 1.3 first half goals. In the Champions League, 3 of their 5 games have been goalless at half time. Only the Frankfurt match at home saw at least 2 goals before half time. So that was quite appealing. And I have to say, despite all the negativity towards Spurs, I was looking at Spurs draw no bet, Spurs +0, around 1.8 as a potential play here, just because of the way in which the match is set up. Marseille will have to come forward and attack them at some point. And as I say, I think that does play into Spurs' hands. That's probably what they prefer to happen. So Marseille are in issue. There is issues around the team right now. There's reports just today coming out again that the players aren't happy and with Igor Tudor, his style, his team selections as well. But obviously, all that probably goes to a side. There's a massive match for everyone at the club. So eager to hear what the other boys think.
Yeah, Adrian, we'll go to you. Are you kind of in agreement with Mark and a lot of what he said in terms of game state and how the game's going to start? Because when you're making a bet, I guess the perfect way is like, right, opening 10, 15 minutes, how's this going to set up? And Mark's bet with first half under seems a decent play.
It does seem like a very good play. Yeah, no, I do agree. And I'm opposing goals as well. Just very quickly on Igor Tudor, he's got some big personalities to deal with in that Marseille dressing room as well. And if they're kicking off, that's got potential for disaster. He's got his hands full. Marseille not full of goals, are they, at the moment? So they won't be confident, I don't think, of scoring multiple times. I was looking at both teams defensively, actually. I was looking at some of the numbers and expected goals against in the group stage of the Champions League. Spurs are the 3rd best in terms of not giving up many expected goals. Who's the 4th best? It's Marseille. So Spurs and Marseille have been pretty good at protecting their own goal throughout this very tight group. So that is something to consider. That's why I'm looking at under 2.5 goals here. I don't think you can trust Spurs enough to back them. I get why Mark would have certainly looked at that avenue, but their record away in the Champions League, okay, they've not played that many games, but since that famous win in Ajax, in the semi-final 2019, they've had 1 win at Red Star Belgrade. They've had 2 draws and they've had 3 defeats. And this season they've struggled for goals, haven't they, in the group stage on the road? So I couldn't back Tottenham here, but at the same breath, I think there are doubts over Marseille and their home form. And I just think with so much at stake, this is going to be cagey. I think Mark touched on it there. I think early on Marseille will press and try and be hostile and try and get at what is, let's face it, I think a get-atable Tottenham defence. I think they'll do that. But if that initially doesn't work, then I think it will become a bit more of a chess match. And it could cancel one cancel one another out. So yeah, for me, under 2.5 goals is the pick. But I do like Mark's shout for first half goals. I hadn't really thought of that. I wouldn't anticipate 2 goals or more in the first half of this match, not at all.
So the under is currently 2.04. That's under 2.5 goals. Adrian touched on a stat there, Miguel. So the third and fourth expected goals against and leaders in that are Spurs and Marseille. So I'm setting you up for a fall here. Why do you like overs? And
Right. I take all that, and I think the lads are absolutely right. But I am guided because I think when it's the last week and things are on the line. And I think we saw a hint of this last week in a lot of games, including Spurs, including Atletico Madrid, where that kind of urgency creates a chaos. And I suppose I'm a little bit maybe influenced also by what happened with Spurs the weekend and the recent games. And it's why I think, I mean, I've also gone quite low. I mean, it's only over 2.5 at an over 3.5. But I just think once it gets to that, and it could become a proper back and forth with two teams that I wouldn't have all that much faith in defensively, whatever about attack at the moment. And yeah, my thinking is almost more general, but it's about the game state in these sort of occasions where a lot of wild stuff can happen.
Yeah, Mark, very briefly on that, the point Miguel made about the Bournemouth game, and there was a small bit of chaos. I know Spurs had to create chaos in that second half, but is there any danger that this game could descend into chaos? Or?
Oh, 100%, absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of Matchday 6 when we have these games on the line. We call it chaos, desperation mode, whatever you like, really. But game plans can go out the window, particularly in the second half. And that's only the reason why I went in terms of the first half unders, because if there is going to be a sort of caginess about it, it tends to be in the first 45 minutes, and teams then tend to sort of release the shackles thereafter, and we get the chaos which we're all craving for, really. But absolutely, it could be there from the first whistle too. So yeah, I mean, originally when I looked at the 4 fixtures we're going to talk about, it was almost goals and overs every way possible, really. But I think of all the 4, this would probably be the one where I could see an opportunity to sort of oppose that rhetoric and take an unders-based approach. So yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of these Matchday 6 games. It's very, very difficult to call. You know, we could easily get a 0-0 here, but also a 3-3. It's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I do like that. I think we'll go with you, Mark, on the under 1.0 first half goals and see how we get on there, because I think if a game does descend into chaos, that's perhaps in the second half with results in the other game perhaps telling there too. So we'll lock that in as an official bet, and we'll move on to the other game in that group, which is Sporting versus Frankfurt. And we'll take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. You can back Sporting at home at 2.44 to win, Frankfurt at 3.1, and the draw is available at 3.6. Both teams to score, yes, is available at 1.75. No is 2.26. The handicap gives Frankfurt a quarter of a goal start at 1.88, and the goal line is 2.5, shaded a little bit to the over at around the 10 to 11 mark, 1.9. Adrian, we'll go to you on this one. You're signing with a team here, so explain the case here.
It's a difficult one. I just think it's a very even looking game. I think that there's a likelihood that we could see goals. I don't see this one being as cagey as the Marseille. Neither defence can be that trusted that much. Frankfurt, I don't think, have a clean sheet away from the home in the Bundesliga. They did get one in Marseille. We talked about Marseille's indifferent home form. They did go there and nick a clean sheet, Frankfurt, didn't they? So that will give them confidence, no doubt about it. Sporting went to Frankfurt and won 3-0, didn't they, on match day 1? It seems a while ago now, but they got off to an absolute flyer. So there'll be a little bit of revenge, I think, in the air. I find it a difficult game to call. So on that, I was just looking at it and I was thinking, well, for me, Frankfurt, because of last season's European run, and I know that they've lost a few players, but they are capable of producing very good away performances. We've seen that in the past, and I don't think this Sporting team are full of goals at all. They lost at home to Arouca at the weekend, which was a real disappointment for them. They played pretty well against Spurs in the first half, but faded. I don't see them as a side that are going to score a lot of goals in this game. Score, yes, but more than one, I'm not so sure. And I think Frankfurt are more than capable of going there and scoring a goal and getting either a score draw or nicking a win. I was looking at defensive records, actually, shots faced, okay, which again is an indication, isn't it, of how well you're set up, how you can keep teams at arm's length. Well, Well, Sporting have faced 77 shots in the group stage. Frankfurt have faced 49. So that tells me that they might be a little bit more solid in terms of their setup. Eintracht Frankfurt. So no, I'm just going with a little bit more recent European pedigree, and that they can get themselves a result here. So yes, Frankfurt plus a quarter of the goal was appealed to me.
Yeah, Miguel, moving on to you for this game. Before you get to your bet, I think one way to make more teams in it going into Matchday 6 will probably be go to the Premier League route with goal difference, because obviously we've head-to-head that is as potentially like the likes of Barcelona is the prime example there. And obviously going into this game, a draw will be enough for Sporting given their head-to-head record.
Yeah, totally. Now, I suppose the one side of this as well is I think what would govern my thinking a lot is just, I mean, any game with most Bundesliga sides these days, particularly with this Frankfurt, it's just going to be an open match. I totally agree with Adrian. It's much more open than Spurs and Olympique Marseille from the start. It's just going to be the way they set up. There won't be the same caginess. As you say, the context of the game is different. And this just feels, even the way it's a slight clash of tactical style between the two sides, I think sets it up into that. And I mean, really, both teams to score feels like an absolutely, I mean, I think 1.76 is quite generous, given that it just seems an absolute banker here, and also I suppose allows, as you say, given the situation of teams, allows a few possibilities, even if it plays out that there can be a sit off, but I'll be very confident on that.
Yeah, Mark, you're in agreement on both teams to score here.
Yeah, for sure. I think the price is very appealing considering the state of play, and Frankfurt are the team who are requiring the victory here, because I think if this was a Bundesliga game under the same settings environment between two teams, let's just say they're not called Sporting in Frankfurt, they're called, I don't know, Cologne and Wolfsburg, you would be getting around 1.5 on both teams to score. So I think there's a misconception that Sporting are pretty defensively minded under Ruben Amorim, and that's not the case. They like to go forward and they like to attack. So even if they are sort of requiring a point here, I don't expect them to shut up shop. But they're not good enough really to do that either. And it's seen in their domestic numbers. 8 of 11 games have gone over 2.5 goals. They've kept just 3 clean sheets in that sample. And I watched the game at Arouca on Saturday night. They were poor for most of the 90. It was played on the dreadful, dreadful pitch, but they really could and should have scored as well. They coughed up some really golden opportunities, and the goalkeeper made some worldy saves as well. So back in Lisbon, with a big crowd behind them, I expect them to be able to fashion an opportunity or two and take a chance that comes their way, because Frankfurt will be open. They'll have to be at some point. They're not the kind of team who like to sit up and soak it up either. They like to engage teams. So two teams who aren't exactly renowned for their defensive fortitude, but both have assets in forward areas. And I think Frankfurt so far this season are really coming to the fore. Mawani is having a great season. Kamada, Goetze, Lindstrom, they've all got ability. But like Sporting, they haven't got a pedigree for keeping clean sheets, just 2 domestically. 7 of the last 9 in the Bundesliga have gone overs. 8 of 12 have featured both teams scoring. Their 5 away Bundesliga games have featured 20 goals, and that's despite not facing an opponent who's higher than 8th in this table so far. So I just think, considering the state of play, I think there's a decent chance we get both teams on the score sheet here, and this is another one, second half, it could be chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll lock in both teams to score 1.76 as a bet there, because Adrian was kind of touching on some of the points there too. So we'll move on to Milan versus Salzburg as the third game here, and take a look at the betting. We'll come to you, Miguel, but we'll look at the betting as we have it on the Matchbook Betting Exchange currently. And Milan, a bit of money just there at 1.57. Salzburg are available at 6.4. The draw is 4.5. Milan are both teams to score 1.82 yes and 2.12 is no. On the Asian handicap line, Salzburg are getting a 1-goal start at 2.02, and the goal line is high enough at 3.0, but that is shaded to the under at 1.8. So, yeah, Miguel, you touched on Milan as one of the great clubs of European football. This is a massive, massive game for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking at this game, almost kind of just essentially surveying the fixture itself and the kind of difference in stature between clubs, you'd think, well, Milan, they should do it, but at the moment, and it's I was considering myself and looking at the odds. At the moment, I think it'd be very difficult to back Milan. They're extremely inconsistent. Lost at the weekend to Torino. Obviously, earlier on in the Champions League itself, There's been ongoing ructions. They had so many injuries when they had those 2 games against Chelsea that has left them in this precarious situation in the first place. And Salzburg, I mean, this is the thing. Salzburg gave Chelsea a much sterner game in Salzburg than Milan did at the San Siro. And it's for that reason, this has the feel of one of those games that just, we could have another one of those surprises. Now, the San Siro will be absolutely rocking for it. But we just wouldn't really have too much confidence either way. I think it's a genuine 50-50 game. And because of that, and because of everything we're talking about as regards the game state and the potential chaos and what these last 15 minutes could look like, especially given the drama in the Champions League this season, this is another banker, both teams to score. I mean, that's actually one thing about, for all we're talking about Champions League history and that, I think the reason we see more chaos and drama out of desperation in these games, because ultimately this is another major evolution in European football, whereas 20 years ago, even, especially when you're talking about the kind of big Italian teams and just the way the game was played, we didn't see pressing to the same level. It was genuinely a much more sedate sport that fed into kind of these sort of, it was always described as the professional European display. Football is actually not geared that way anymore. And because of the evolution of pressing and counter-pressing and how widespread it is, particularly among Italian clubs now, it just makes those sort of cagey matches much less likely, particularly given these 2 clubs. And I think this game could actually be proper end-to-end, or at the very least, develop into that very quickly.
Yeah, Adrian, for you, I think it's important with game stay here and just explain to the listeners. So obviously Milan just need a point to qualify. Is there a danger then with 30 minutes to go, they might just shut up shop completely if the game's 0-0, 1-1, or?
Maybe it's not easy to do that with a crowd, sort of, big crowd baying for them to go out there and win the game. They did win 4-0, didn't they, in Zagreb, which I think was impressive, and it just goes. That just adds to the frustration when you see that they lose to Torino at the weekend. So yeah, they are a hard team to get a steer on. Salzburg have scored in every game, haven't they, as well? That would lend itself to the both teams to score angle. But they've only scored 1 in every game, not gone beyond a goal yet. And I think they've only conceded more than 1 goal on a single occasion as well, and that was against Chelsea, where they scored 2 good goals, didn't they, Chelsea, in that win. So Salzburg aren't a team that's going to go crazy in terms of scoring goals or concede based on what we've seen in the Champions League this season. So I don't know whether this will be as wild as some of the other games. I just think AC Milan's pedigree and superior quality. Leao is a player I really, really like, and they've got a number of big name players that have maybe been a bit too inconsistent of late, who might just raise their game, in my opinion, when the pressure is on. And I think that they're capable of scoring a couple of goals here in the game, AC Milan, which I believe will be enough to see off a Salzburg team that I don't see scoring 2, 3 or 4 on the night. So yeah, for me, I went Milan and under 4.5, but they are inconsistent. And I could see why some people would have doubts. So this would be more on a hunch than the numbers as such, this particular prediction.
Yeah, Mark, where are you again on the game state sort of? Where are you seeing this first half going? Are you seeing Salzburg coming out of it and trying to score a goal, perhaps, because they obviously need the win more than Milan?
I think so. I think they've got the talent to do so. The local press in Austria are calling it the grand final, and I think they're building it up as a massive match, being able to go to the San Siro, and I think they can make their mark. I think they're good enough to qualify out this group. Matthias Lascelles, his squad, if you look towards the forward areas, Okafor and Adamu are a real handful at the best of times. Sesko from the bench. So they're a team who are blessed with pace, with trickery, with invention. I don't think we've seen the best of them in the competition so far, and injuries have bitten them quite hard, like Milan as well at the start of the competition. But I think they'll relish this situation, being big underdogs, needing to go and beat Milan in their own stadium. Kind of suits them as well. And the goals might not have come, but they're averaging 1.4 XG per game so far in this pool. They've had at least 15 shots in 4 of their 5 games. The first of which was, of course, against Milan, and game ended 1-1. There was 30 shots in that game. It was a great game to watch, actually. And Salzburg probably edged it, really. Didn't get what they probably deserved. But Milan have come under a lot of criticism for the weekend. Pioli made 3 changes at half-time because he was so unimpressed, and Rafael Leao was one of the players who was hooked after being very, very wasteful. It was a rare away defeat for Milan. They're normally pretty consistent on the road. It's at San Siro where they've had a few issues in the past under Pioli, who was very critical of his team's mindset and intensity at the weekend. They lack quality in both boxes. Perhaps this match was on their mind. Hard to really know about that. But like Salzburg, really, I've got no doubts about their ability in the final third. Brahim Diaz is fine, fit and available. Leao is obviously available if he can recapture his form. Giroud was rested at the weekend. Rebic is fit. But defensively, they're still without their first-choice goalkeeper, Mike Maignan, Calabria and Florenzi missing too. And I still think throughout this season, they've missed the box-to-box quality of Frank Kessié as well. So I think there is less protection for that back four, which is under strength at the minute. They've managed 4 clean sheets across Serie A and the Champions League. So very keen on Salzburg scoring in this match. And if you think they're going to score, they probably will concede as well against that Milan attack. So both teams to score has actually won in 25 of Salzburg's last 30 games in the Champions League. It's also been a winner in 9 of Milan's last 12 in the Serie A so far this season as well. So you're getting 1.83 on both teams scoring. It appeals to me again. Just the state of play in this pool, Salzburg needing to win, I think there's set up wonderfully for a bit of a shootout. So goals for me.
It's a Red Bull thing, isn't it? The Red Bull love both teams to score, don't they? When you think about Leipzig as well, like their record
we'll come to
crazy.
that.
Yeah, exactly. So that would have been my next choice. I think both teams to score. I think Salzburg were worth a goal here.
Yeah, I think we'll lock in both teams to score. I was leaning to you, Adrian, but I think the lads make a good case. 1.82. I've gone 0-2. It's good that the lads fully agree not to give too much away on the next game. And look, I gave out about the head-to-head, but I think the head-to-head here makes it so simple for game state here, which we'll get to in a second. But Shakhtar versus Leipzig, and Shakhtar are currently 5.1 at home to beat Leipzig. Leipzig are 1.7. The draw is available at 4.1. Both teams to score, yes, is 1.74. No, it's 2.22. Leipzig are taking on the Asian handicap 3/4 goal line at 1.9, and the total is currently 3.0, and that's shaded a good bit towards the under. So, Adrian, we'll go to you on this. And I mentioned game state there. Shakhtar obviously got a brilliant win in Matchday 1, and it's just been the opposite in terms of where these two teams have gone. But look, at home, I know they're a massive price, but they're definitely in with half a shout here.
They're in with the shout, yeah, definitely. But they're up against the Leipzig team that's in form, aren't they? 1-7 and lost 2 of their last 9, scoring goals freely. That was some result, wasn't it, against Real Madrid from RB Leipzig? That was absolutely tremendous. But Shakhtar are pretty entertaining, aren't they? I think both teams to score has landed in all their Champions League games so far this season, Shakhtar, and I would expect that to continue here. It's probably little wonder they've conceded goals, because I was looking at shots faced again in the Champions League. Rangers are the worst. I don't think any of us would be surprised to hear that. But Shakhtar come next. They've faced 97 shots in this group, and I think they'll have to face a few more against this Leipzig team that are sort of flying at the moment. But look, at the other end with Mudryk and co, and if they can avoid missing open goals and whatnot, they've got potential to score plenty themselves, haven't they? I was looking at their record against German opponents. Shakhtar, it's really bad. 22 goals conceded across 6 games against German teams in the Champions League. So I do think that Leipzig are more likely to get revenge here, personally, for that strange win. I mean, it was a brilliant smash and grab win, wasn't it, on Matchday 1, where I think they scored 4 goals, Shakhtar, from only 5 shots. I think that Leipzig will be absolutely pumped up to inflict a bit of damage. But I'm not going to back Leipzig. I'm just going to back goals here, because I think it feels nailed on that we're going to see 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 goals in total. It'll be one of those crazy games. So over 2.75 goals would be my pick here.
Yeah, Miguel's definitely hovering over the document, maybe to increase his goal line here, but we'll get to that in a sec.
Looking got over 5.5.
Yeah. Mark, similar question to you, I guess. And obviously, your bet came up Leipzig and over 1.5 at the weekend. They're in form, and it's hard probably to make the case for Shakhtar, but I guess that Matchday 1 result gives them hope.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but Adrian's right. It was a strange game where they were very, very clinical. And Peter Kolaschi, the Leipzig goalkeeper, gave them a very helping hand too. And it was towards the end of Domenico Tedesco's reign too. I think he was sacked days after that. So this is going to be a different Leipzig team, and obviously the game was taking place in Warsaw, so it's effectively a neutral venue, really. So that takes away the sort of home advantage for Shakhtar as well. Yeah, I'm expecting an all or nothing approach from them coming into this match, obviously with the requirement to win the game. And yeah, it just smells of a goal heavy game, really, with Mudryk, continuing to make headlines for exceptional performances, and Leipzig having that fabled front four fit and available, and Cuckoo and Silva and Werner and Szoboszlai. It's very difficult to oppose goals considering the talent that's on show. And I expect Leipzig to score at least once, probably twice. Celtic had 17 shots when they came to Warsaw to face Shakhtar. Could have easily scored a couple themselves. Madrid had 16. No reason why Leipzig can't come close to those tallies themselves, although they have been fragile when they're playing away from Leipzig. And that's been a running theme for quite some time now, not just under Marco Rosa, but before him too. And they've conceded twice or more themselves, 4 times away from home domestically, including on their last away game at Augsburg. They conceded 3 goals and looked a real rabble defensively too. So, as Adrian says, all 5 of Shakhtar's games have seen both teams scoring. 3 of Leipzig's 5 have gone overs. If you look at the group as a whole, it's very surprising we only had 5 of the 10 games going over 2.5 goals, but 7 of the 10 games in this group have seen both teams scoring. Those 10 games are averaging 3 goals per game, which is very much close to the expected goals average of 2.9 per game. I thought it was interesting too that the 10 matches have produced a total of 49 chances that Opta require, or Opta call as big chances, where a player has a realistic chance to score. So it has been a very open group from start to finish, really. And I think we've got this game is wonderfully set up again for another high-scoring game. Shakhtar win, they take second. Leipzig avoid defeat, they take second. Could even top the group if Madrid drop points at home to Celtic as well. So a lot to play for both teams. So yeah, expecting it to be high-scoring.
Yeah, Miguel, you're fully in agreement on the over 2 3/4 goals. We're locking in, I think, at a 1.9.
Yeah, maybe the only reason I haven't gone is maybe as abrasive as usual. I've also had the fingers burnt a few times the last few weeks, but also almost a little bit of kind of inversion of the Milan game as well. Whereas Leipzig could be in an interesting position in this game, obviously because they only need the draw, but they're away from home, and it could be a slightly. And as lads referenced there about that kind of, they're not all that convincing away. They could be in a slight kind of stick or twist situation, even though I would still expect them to obviously continue in that style that has become, the Red Bull ideology. But even psychologically, it makes it a slightly strange one for the players to go into. That could kind of skew this game a little bit more. But yeah, but certainly from that perspective, I'd go goals, but not out there on goals.
Yeah, let's lock it in. Over 2 3/4 goals, 1.9 currently. Shakhtar versus Leipzig. Very quickly, I'll recap the other 3 bets we put up there. Both teams to score 1.83. Milan versus Salzburg. Both teams to score. Sporting versus Frankfurt at 1.76, and then under 1 first half goal at 2.1 in Marseille versus Spurs. And incidentally, Matchbook Insights or insights.matchbook.com, you'll get a full recap of all the guys' bets about Monday afternoon. So if you are listening on the podcast after that, do check them out if you've missed anything that we previously covered, or any other bets and best bets to come up. And incidentally, I see a lot of comments on Liverpool versus Napoli. We do have one of the guys' best bets leaning there, so stay tuned for that. So Adrian, any other bet section would take it away? PSG and over 1.5 versus Juventus. I guess the case here is that Juventus are pretty, brutal. I think is I don't know what I think. Mark would have used Dross a few weeks ago, and I don't think much has changed there, at least in the Champions League.
Dross was a good shout. Juventus aren't the force they were, that's for sure. And look, I think here PSG have got 2 twin motivations. First of all, they want to win the group. They definitely want to finish in top spot rather than relinquish it to Benfica. So there's motivation there, but there's also an opportunity to knock, a major European rival out of Europe if Maccabi Haifa were to get something. So there's a little bit of there could be a bit of spite in it from PSG. We know about their attack. We know what they're capable of with Mbappe flying, Messi flying, Neymar not so much so, but he's still worth a goal, isn't he? So they're full of goals, PSG. Maybe not so secure at the back in recent games. They've been involved in a few sort of crazy sort of end-to-end matches in recent times, a bit loose at the back. But yeah, I think this match will focus their minds, and based on what we've seen in the Champions League, they're a class apart from this group at Juventus, who have conceded 11 goals in 5 group games. I think that 11 could turn into 13, 14 or 15. I really do in this game. So yeah, I just thought it was an opportunity to back PSG, to oppose Juventus. And if you don't think it's going to be a 1-0, then slightly better than even money, we're quids in.
Yeah, bit of support there in the comments for this bet, and I think PSG and over 1.5 at even money or over even money is a solid play there. And before we get to the best bets, as I touched on, we'll have Liverpool versus Napoli bet there as well. Quickly point in the direction of our latest sign-up offer that we currently have on Matchbook. It's a £30 welcome offer. It's money back as a free bet if your first bet loses up to £30. That's money back as a free bet if your first bet loses up to £30. All you have to do is enter the bonus code INSIDES30. Insights 30 when signing up and to take available that offer. We touched on a lot of the guys' bets here. If you want to combine them in a multiple, we're one of the few exchanges that do provide that platform as well. So if you want to have a Champions League multiple, £30 welcome offer, it's money back as a free bet, completely risk-free, and take advantage of invariably our best price when it comes to Premier League and particularly Champions League games in that hour or two before kickoff. So we'll get the best bets. We've kept the people waiting long enough, Miguel. A lot of support for Napoli in the comments here, but you have a different sort of angle going into this game. So maybe take it away first, and we'll go through prices.
So I mean, I would, for a best bet, I'd freely admit this is a bit more of a punt, but I saw the price and think, there's a bit of rationale here, which is basically both teams not to score in Liverpool and Napoli, because obviously Napoli have just surged through the group. I wonder whether Spalletti will make changes. On the other side, Liverpool they're true as well. But it's almost become something else with Liverpool, given their awful league form and 2 consecutive defeats in the back of the Man City game. But sometimes what happens in these situations, the Champions League as well, where a team has cruised through their group and inevitably it's like the switch flicks for the last game, and they can sometimes it's just they're flat or there's a little bit of a drop off. And that's kind of informing my thinking here. I mean, I'm almost tempted to go for a biggish Liverpool win, because this is actually probably it's the first game Napoli have played this season where, not that there's nothing on the line. I mean, obviously the Rangers won last week; they're already true, but it was a last home game in the Champions League group stage in what obviously has been such an incredible campaign. Whereas this is the first felt where suddenly they can afford to relax, and I do wonder whether that will have some sort of mental effect. That's kind of what's informing my thinking here. And also, I mean, if on the other side, Liverpool again aren't at it, or if Klopp makes changes himself because he's concerned about the league form and actually decides to rest players, this could be one of those just tepid 0-0. That's something you also see when 2 teams are true and it's a dead rubber, when the teams almost just, it can usually go one of 2 ways. Either it's a bit of a free-for-all because no one really cares, or else it just becomes a flat match because it's lacking in the intensity that comes from any urgency. But I just think there's enough potential out there to make this bet and both teams not to score pretty justifiable, and at a good price as well.
Yeah, 2.64, can't really argue. And the best thing about both teams to score is you can in your head you can get it wrong, and Liverpool can win hammer or Napoli can hammer, and you still get paid out. But
one thing I'd mention as well, just Napoli this weekend, they're playing Atalanta in Serie A as well, which, regardless of kind of extending the winning streak and regardless of being, I think, only the second Italian team to go 6 from 6 in the group stage, you have to assume that the game against Atalanta is much bigger than this midweek. So I think he made 5 or 6 changes against Rangers on match day 5. Clearly the opposition is more difficult this time around, but I'm expecting Napoli to bring the changes again.
And incidentally, 0-0, which of course similar game state with Dortmund City landed 0-0 as well. 0-0 is 22.0 in this match, so I know there's 2 brilliant attacks, but maybe getting in before ahead of a bit of team news could work there potentially as a bet. So and a lot of those correct scores are very competitive on Matchbook as well. So Adrian, we'll go to you, and we've touched on this, so you can be very brief on this one, but you do like the goal line at Shakhtar versus Leipzig, over 2 3/4 goals at 1.9.
Yeah, I'm kind of loath to bet to tip up matches where there's not too much on it, if you know what I mean, because there were so many unknowns, as we just talked about there. Yeah, I'd prefer to sort of concentrate on the matches that matter. And of my picks, this is the one that I feel most confident about. It's the game state, isn't it? Shakhtar need to win. They're going to go for it. They're an attacking side by nature anyway. And they've got some great talents. They've scored 4 against Leipzig before. They'll be roared on, albeit by a mainly Polish crowd in Warsaw, and I think they'll go for it. But this Leipzig team they're just full of goals at the moment. They're winning matches. They're scoring 2s, 3s, 4s most weeks. They're not the best away from home. We know that they can give up goals. So yeah, I see certainly both teams scoring, and yeah, over 2.75 really stands out to me.
Mark, then over to you. So sorry, that's over 2.75 goals, 1.9 Shakhtar versus Leipzig. And then Mark, your best bet is AC Milan versus Salzburg. Both teams to score yes at 1.83.
Yeah, I mean, I could have picked Adrian's bet. I could have picked probably any one of the 4 bets we have on the menu this week. I like all of them pretty much equally, really. But this one stands out just because Salzburg have seen this bet land in 25 of the last 30 Champions League games. I do believe, and I'm a big fan of their front 2 of Okafor and Adamo. I think they can cause Milan problems. We saw that in the first game between the 2 teams, which was a really lively affair. And as I said already on the show, that Salzburg have had at least 15 shots in 4 of their first 5 group games. So if they can repeat the feat here in San Siro, they've got a good opportunity of getting on the score sheet. But you'd also back Milan to get on the score sheet too, because there's just too much talent in that front line. They need a reaction after what happened at the weekend against Torino. There'll be a full crowd at San Siro backing them to do so. So much on the line, expecting a bit of a shootout here, which I think does actually favour Salzburg more than Milan, but we'll wait and see on the result. I just think both teams can oblige. It's been a winning bet in 9 of Milan's 12 Serie A games already this season. They've managed just 4 clean sheets. I think Salzburg can extend that streak here.
Absolutely. So that's Milan versus Salzburg. Both teams to score 1.83, and that's us done. And incidentally, we see a lot of the comments there. If you are watching back the live stream or you're watching the live stream, do comment your best bet for Matchday 6 and hit that like button. It helps us get this content out to a wider audience. My thanks to Adrian, my thanks to Mark, my thanks to Miguel. We'll be back same time Thursday to preview the weekend's action. It's hard to believe there's only 2 game weeks left of the Premier League before we get a nice 6-week break for the World Cup. We'll see you on Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.